Welcome, everybody, to Fourth and Frames. I'm Chris Battistel with my two friends, Rhett Manuel and Drew Scott. And tonight, we welcome very special guest, save the best for last guest, Jorge Edwards. And we dive into his bussin', discussing, and mid-plays for Week 17. We engage in some master debation and talk high-profile players in trust or bust. Let's get it popping. All right, we welcome to the show, like I mentioned from the top, the captain here at Fantasy and Frames, the president, the capo, someone that we all get to call boss and friend at the end of the day. We would not be here, the three of us especially, if it wasn't for this man sharing not only the airwaves, but the screen with us tonight, Mr. Jorge Edwards. Jorge, welcome to the show.
First of all, love what you've done with the place. It's very nice. I like what you guys got going on. Thank you very much for having me back on the show. It's been a while, but I can't wait. Look, this is what we've all been doing this for. I mean, you all started with Fantasy and Frames around this time last year, and everything we've done here as a brand has all been leading up to this week, this episode for Fourth and Frames. This information we're about to get all the fantasy content consumers out there. This is championship weekend for a lot of people. And just really looking forward to digging into it, answering some people's questions. So if they're hopping in the chat, which by the way, if you're on Twitter, we can now see your questions on Twitter, or X as it's called now. So make sure you do that. But yeah, just happy to be with the three of you guys talking ball.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. It is championship weekend if your league does it right. Jorge, how many chips you got rocking in this weekend?
So I got two that I'm in. One's an all offense dynasty, and then one is an all IDP dynasty. And tomorrow, Nate Markham and I, we're going to be doing a shoot the gap. And needless to say, in this all IDP dynasty league championship, it's actually Nate versus myself. So
nice.
Needless to say, there will be a pie bet that will be made from this because that's how it should be. So it's definitely going to be a fun weekend, nonetheless. But you all, how are you all doing in your leagues? Are there any championships you all will be participating in? I guess Drew, let's start with you.
No comment. No, unfortunately, championship week is a very boring one for me. Both my dynasty leagues, my championship was getting the high draft picks I was hoping for. Then my one redraft league didn't really play out the way I wanted it to. So no championships for me. But I think this guy above me, Chris Battistel, I'm in like 50 leagues. I think he's in a couple this weekend.
Yeah, I got a good number rolling, two handfuls. But I've spread myself out there to be in that position. But nothing like a good sweat. Probably going to end up winning one of them on championship weekend. But Rhett, how many you got going on, man?
Played 7 leagues this year. One championship round that I'm in this week. Started off last night. Had the monster David Njoku first quarter to get my hopes sky high. And then he just did nothing after that. But, you get 20 points out of the tight end position to start the week. That's a good start for you. So he had Breece Hall going to, got 30 out of the RB position. So, fun night last night. Flacco Mania was running wild, brother. And, we're going to run wild tonight.
Yes, sir. I did have quite a bit of Jerome Ford and David Njoku playing for me last night. So I'm off to a hot start. I am facing Burnsy in one final. Chris Burns, the dynasty deviant himself. Unfortunately for me, he left Amari Cooper in his lineup. So I've already got one leg up on my competition. So way to go, Burnsy. Thank you very much for that.
Burnsy, Jorge, no, man.
Yeah. Jorge, I got to ask, because you're in a final with Nate and you're on a show with him, when you guys are going through your research process, do you try to sewer any of his top-rated players with the hopes that he ends up benching those guys?
No, he's way too smart for that.
Yeah.
I will say this with Nate. He will have no problem showing off his belts or trophies after he wins the title, just based off of experience, which as you should. You win the title, you win the ship, you deserve the right to flaunt it. But him and I are actually really good when it comes to not talking trash beforehand. And for me, I can't speak for him, but for me, whenever I talk trash, it always backfires in my face. So whenever
it's
people,
bad luck.
yeah, I can't do it. I can't, no matter how much the projections are swayed towards one side or the other. Can't do it, won't do it. I just, people in the league chat are like, oh my God, we got the two FIF guys, going off against each other this week. And like they're waiting for some trash talking to start. And I'm just like, nope, not falling for it. Not falling for it.
Yeah, I'm the guy in the chat that's like, after the first game, I'm like, okay, man, you won. Trying to reverse
the reverse curse. I love the reverse curse. Big fan of that one.
Try to mush the other team as much as I can. But Nate's a great player. He beat me in the Fantasy and Frames Dynasty League by 0.70 points to go. I know it's a heartbreaker for me there, but lots of – go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of that Fantasy and Frames Dynasty League, it is, I believe it's Jonathan Klonowski versus Nate in the finals this week. Fun story. Last year, after our startup for that league, I traded my first and Pacheco for 2 seconds to Jonathan. And if Jonathan ends up winning and I end up losing to Tyler, not only would he walk away with the championship this year, but the #1 overall pick as well in rookie drafts.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Win-win right there.
Right? Kudos to Jonathan.
I love it. Yeah, it should be a fun championship there. We got a lot of football to get into, fellas. Let's start with some injury news from around the NFL. All right, from the top, tight end Cole Kmet with the knee injury is questionable to play. He's trending towards playing. Michael Mayer, tight end, is out this weekend with the toe injury. Same with Josh Jacobs, trending towards not playing. He was hit with the doubtful take. Kyler Murray did not practice Thursday, but is expected to play this weekend. Marquise Brown placed on the injured reserve. Jorge, who outside of Trey McBride can we trust in that Arizona Cardinals wide receiver room with Marquise Brown heading to the IR?
Wow, that's such this shouldn't be a loaded question, but it is a loaded question. who should you trust?
Greg Dortch, Rondale Moore.
You shouldn't
pretty
trust
much McBride and Connor, right?
It's exactly right. Those are the only two you should be trusting. Everybody else, you're hoping for some type of fluky, 1 for 5, reception, catch, target, for a home run ball. Just avoid at all costs if you can.
Yes, sir. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, has been ruled out. Tua Tagovailoa is expected to play. Keenan Allen ruled out, most likely shut down for the season. A great fantasy producer gone too soon this season. Cortland Sutton out for the Denver Broncos. It's an absolute mess in Denver right now. Drew, are we starting Jerry Jeudy knowing that Russell Wilson's benched and Jarrett Stidham's going to be the guy under center this week? Or are we just not touching any of the Denver offense?
I'm just staying away from the Denver offense entirely. I can't do it, man. And I've loved Jerry Jeudy, and the matchup theoretically is supposed to be good against the Chargers, but with everything going on, if there's a guy I have to play, it would be Jerry Jeudy, but I would prefer to just stay away from the offense in general.
Yeah, it's the news coming out of there with the Russell Wilson benching, of course, with them asking him to defer his contract with the injury bonus and everything like that is just wild stuff. And then he had the interview that came out today where he's just like, this is what's going on. So messy situation there in Denver. Josh Palmer, wide receiver for the Chargers, also out. Trevor Lawrence, quarterback, Jacksonville Jaguars, out. CJ Beathard is going to be the starting quarterback. Rhett, it is championship weekend, we have a high-profile wide receiver who's given us some output over the last couple weeks in Calvin Ridley, with CJ Beathard playing quarterback with the news of Trevor Lawrence being out this weekend. Are we trusting Calvin Ridley, or is there someone that you're comfortable pivoting to that may not be as high profile as a wide receiver?
In Jacksonville's wide receiver room, or just in general?
In general.
Okay, so what I'm gonna say is this: is that last week we can all agree that the Jacksonville Jaguars practiced that Tua medicine when they threw Trevor Lawrence out there, because if he's out this week, then he probably shouldn't have been playing last week. So it's safe to say that Trevor Lawrence was not 100% and probably shouldn't have been out on the field. Calvin really ended up with a very solid second half last week, had a nice game. I'm going to say this, is that there are that Jacksonville offense has several options. I would say Evan Ingram is probably a little bit more of a safe play this week because of the fact that, backup quarterbacks, check downs, that whole narrative as well. And same with the Chargers, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. So if you have a backup quarterback right now, I mean, if you have a good, decent, athletic tight end, might be a good week to plug him in if you're desperate at the tight end position this week.
Yes, sir. Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver for the New England Patriots, out. Zach Moss, running back, Indianapolis Colts, out. Jonathan Taylor should see a heavy dose of the touches for the Indianapolis Colts this weekend. And Christian Watson and show favorite, Jorge favorite, D.W. Dontavian Wicks, both doubtful this weekend for the Green Bay Packers. That's the injury news from around the NFL. Did I miss any? You guys got any other little tidbits floating around that we don't know about?
I will say that Wicks did get bumped up from doubtful to questionable. Okay. So there is
that's good.
There is some hope there.
Yeah. Yep, that's good. That's good. Love to hear it. Puka Nacua was also, I think it was just illness for him, right, Drew? This past week, why he wasn't practicing.
Yeah. Puka's good. He'll be fine.
Puka's good. He will be fine. He will be fine. I don't know. You guys watch? Any of you guys watch Forged in Fire?
Nope.
No. Oh man. Okay. Well, the reference I would give for Puka Nacua would just go right over your heads. So I'm going to keep that one into my pocket until one of you guys have at least watched Forged in Fire. That's injury news from around the NFL. Welcome, everybody, just tuning into the show. We appreciate each and every one of you. This is Fourth and Frames Championship Weekend Edition, and we have very, very special guest Jorge Edwards with us here today. And we are going to jump right into bussing, discussing, and mid.
Go and try your luck. Test me in again. We let it rain. Please don't start us up. Got that black and white, that yin and yang. Mr. Officer, please don't search us. We don't.
All right, Jorge, this is pretty much your brainchild here. This segment from early on in the summer, Rhett was just dropping his slang in the chat, and you're like, "Hey, man, that would be a good idea for a show segment." And here we are, 17 weeks in, and we saved the best for last with you joining the show. So our bussin' players are players outside of the consensus top 20 wide receivers, top 15 running backs, top 8 tight ends, and top 12 QBs, according to Fantasy Pros ECR consensus rankings. Our discussing players are players inside those parameters that we don't like. So those high-profile players that we don't think are going to have good days. And our mid players are our favorite, QB 2, 3, wide receiver 3, 4, RB 2 to 4, back end tight end 1 to 3 guys that at the very least we believe are going to hit their fantasy floor for one of the most, if not the most important weekend in fantasy football, championship weekend. And we have to start this off with the guest as always. So Jorge, what's your bussin' call for week 17?
So before I give you my bussin' call, I just want to give a quick shout out, and I know you all do it all the time. That little music intro ditty we just had there for Bussin', Discussing, and Mid, and all the different segues and stuff. Just want to shout out Gator J.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for all your hard work. You will be back in a few weeks, folks. So just looking forward to having you back, Gator. We miss you. and wishing you a happy holiday and happy New Year. With that said, Chris, one of the things, well, it's actually all three of you guys. You guys do a really good job at this. It's very easy to get swept away by looking at season-long stats and trying to apply that to current situations, when in reality, you should really be looking at trends, right? 3-4 weeks if you want. I like to do 3. Some can make the argument for 4, what have you. But if I was looking at just the season-long stats of fantasy points allowed to a position, there's no way I would recommend to you Geno Smith this week, who on average versus quarterbacks, the Steelers are only allowing 15.5 points per game to the position, okay? Now, that being the case, Geno Smith came back last week after missing some time due to an injury versus the Tennessee Titans. Didn't do anything crazy spectacular. But let's talk about quarterbacks who have done things that are spectacular against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You go back to week 16, Jake Browning didn't have the crazy monster game, but he had 335 yards passing. We go back to week 15 versus Gardner Minshew, 215 and 3 touchdowns. Go back to Thursday Night Football a few weeks ago. Bailey Zappi of the Patriots, 240 yards, 3 touchdowns. You're telling me Geno Smith with Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Walker out of the backfield as a pass catching option. You telling me he can't go off against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense at home in Seattle? Like, it's for me, it's a no brainer. If those quarterbacks who are setting the bar for what's to be expected, I think Geno, his second game back, coming back from dealing with his, I believe it was a groin injury. My groin, for the Simpsons fans out there who get the reference. I'm all aboard Geno Smith this week, helping you to deliver a fantasy championship to you.
Yeah, show favorite, Geno Smith. He's got all the weapons at his disposal. Ken Walker, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and the Jigba. When we were debating Gardner Minshew over Matt Stafford, Rhett and myself, I gave him that matchup in that Gardner Minshew, that Pittsburgh was the toughest matchup for him. And then he went out there and just carved him up like a Thanksgiving turkey. So I'm expecting the exact same thing to happen with one of the most accurate passers in the NFL, and Geno Smith. So I love the Geno Smith call there for your busting call for week 17.
I'll even say for people who are into big DFS lineups, don't scoff at Colby Parkinson at tight end. He's been showing a little bit of rapport with Geno the past couple weeks. So again, really a deep play, salary saving, cost move there. But Colby Parkinson, keep that name in the back of your mind, folks.
Colby. All right, Drew. We got show favorite Geno Smith here on week 17 bussin'. We got another show favorite here with your call. Lay it on us, man.
Yes, sir. It broke my heart to have to make him my disgusting pick whenever they played the Jets a few weeks back. So this feels a lot better. And the formula, it's been relatively simple for Nico Collins this year. He's played 8 home games and 5 away games. He's averaging 64 more receiving yards per game at home, and all 7 of his receiving touchdowns on the year have come at home. His best fantasy finish in a road game this year was the wide receiver 27 in week 1 against Baltimore. And the other 4 road games, he's been the wide receiver 52 or worse. But in the 8 home games that he's played, he's had 5 top 12 finishes at the position. So it's just an added bonus that it sounds like he's getting CJ Stroud back, and what should be a plus matchup for Nico as well. The Titans have technically only been the 15th best schedule adjusted matchup for the wide receiver position over the last 8 weeks. But that's partially due to the fact that the Titans have played Bryce Young and the Panthers and the Texans without CJ Stroud in that 8-week stretch too. So some easier matchups for them. But outside of those 2 weeks, they've been the pass defense we've expected them to be. And, they've been giving up points to the wide receiver position like we would expect them to do. And since week 11, 72% of the fantasy points the Titans have given up to the wide receivers have went out to those that line up out wide. And during that same time frame, Nico's lined up out wide 81% of the time. So he's going to be right there where they're bleeding fantasy points at the position. So this week checks all the boxes for me. For Nico, he's at home with his quarterback going up against a beatable secondary that's been extra beatable exactly where he lines up the majority of the time. So Fantasy Pros week 17 ECR has Nico as the wide receiver 21. I've got him up at wide receiver 13.
Yep. Beautiful stuff there. I'm excited with him. Like you said, with CJ Stroud coming back in the fold. They didn't get to play with each other their first matchup against Tennessee, but now that CJ Stroud's back, I'm excited for this matchup. We were all mentioning the Derrick Henry against Houston matchups of the past, but he did not look that great against Houston 2 weeks ago. So we got a question here in the chat. Dylan Fink, what's up, boys? Got some championship startup lineup questions. If y'all doing some questions and this is live, yes, we are definitely doing questions. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. So fire away what you got, Dylan. We will answer it live on the air, man. All right, so we got busing calls, Geno Smith. We got busing call, Nico Collins. Again, busing are guys that we believe are going to smash their consensus. And our last one here, the tight end guy on Fourth and Frames. He likes to call himself the guru, but I am not going to label him that yet. Rhett, drop us your busted call week 17, brother.
First off, I'd like to proclaim innocence on calling myself a guru. You put that in your own head, but let's keep rolling. All right, so I think we can all agree that Gerald Everett has kind of been a miserable player for most of the season fantasy-wise. But ever since his Justin Herbert injury has happened, he's kind of come around. And this week, he's the ECR tight end 12, and he has the Denver Broncos. And so, guys, I'm going to go ahead and drop why Gerald Everett is one of those guys that you should be looking at this week. So, since week 14, Derek Brown of Fantasy Pros did the hard work for me to consolidate all this. He's had a 65.9% route run rate, a 22.4% target share, 1.51 yards per route run. He's been the first read on 24.3% of plays. And as Chris mentioned in the injury report, we have Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer out this week. So what this tells me is that we should get a healthy share of Gerald Everett this week. Over the past 5 weeks, he's had 6 red zone targets. And in the past 3 games, he's had 8 targets in each of those past 3 games as well. Now, I will say this. He has very much been a check down guy. The average depth of target has not been there for him, but when he has been checked down, he's been effective on those check downs, and he's averaged 4.71 yards after catch for each reception. And when Easton Stick has gotten the ball to him, he's been pretty accurate with the 87.5% catchable targets rate. So this is where I'm really in on Gerald Everett this week, is that his expected fantasy points, this from the fantasy data suite, over the past 3 weeks, which is when this target streak has happened, his expected fantasy points have been 37.9 fantasy points or 12.6 points per game over the past 3 weeks, when I think the actual number has been something along the lines of 10.7. So he's actually been performing below what's been expected for his target share. So against a Denver Broncos defense that is the league worst against the tight ends for the season, we should be looking at a spot with a couple of wide receivers out, with Austin Eckler kind of being hit or miss, mostly miss over the past month or so. And all these different things, if you need a streamer in your championship week, you're going to do a lot worse than Gerald Everett this week. So I would say fire him up without a doubt.
Yeah, love it. We got a question here from Juan Pinellas. Broccoli or rice? And I'm going to go with rice because rice is good when you want to eat 2,000 of something. No, we got Barkley or Rashee Rice, Jorge. PPR, which one you taking?
For me, it's Saquon Barkley. You have to roll with Barkley here. It's his work between the tackles, as well as being a receiving option, more than makes up for what's happening. I trust Tyrod Taylor to get him the ball. That's as much as I'll trust Tyrod Taylor to do anything else for the Giants offense this week. So yeah, give me Barkley.
Yep, Barkley versus the Rams there. So Barkley over Rice and the full PPR. Those are our busting calls for week 17. Jorge gave us Geno Smith, Drew, Nico Collins, and Rhett hit us with tight end Gerald Everett. Now we're going to pivot to guys that we don't like that much this week. More high-profile guys. Not necessarily straight sits, but just, proceed with cautions with some of these guys. It is championship weekends. You don't want to get caught starting a guy just because of name value. So we got 3 great minds here on the panel. And Jorge, you let us off with bussin' QB. You got a discussing QB. What do you got, man?
Yeah, so full disclosure, back before we went on the air, I was talking with Rhett, and I'm going through my, mid and my discussing quarterback plays, and I'm just like, man, I feel like I have two mids versus a discussing and a mid here. But if I had to pick the worst of the two, and this is probably going to shock people later on as we get into my mid pick later, but I'm not feeling too good about Tua Tagovailoa. You look at back-to-back weeks, the Baltimore Ravens have held now former MVP candidate Brock Purdy to just 2.4 fantasy points. Week 15, Trevor Lawrence 9.3. When you look back weeks 4 through 16, when facing pressure or being blitzed, Tua Tagovailoa over the past during that time span has only put up 249 yards passing, nothing special, no touchdowns. He hasn't been turning the ball over, which is great. You don't want that happening, but he hasn't been really producing when facing these tough defenses that come after you. And you look at the Baltimore Ravens weeks 14 through 16, their edge rushers of Jadeveon Clowney, who this person, let's talk about, a lot of people talk about comeback players of the year and whatnot. Why his name has not been thrown around there more, I have no idea, because he went from obscurity to back into full-on relevance being an edge rusher for the Baltimore Ravens. He has 11 total pressures since week 14. Adafi Owe, 13 total pressures since week 14. Kyle Van Noy, the ageless wonder, 12 total pressures since week 14. So you also look at the Dolphins' offensive line. They've had some injuries there. They lost, I believe, one of their interior linemen for the season since week 14, allowed the third most sacks to the quarterback position. So, yes, there's a reason for me to say that he is my discussive pick because of the matchup here. Now, let me play devil's advocate on my own take here. We saw what happened versus the 49ers. The Ravens just kind of had their way with them. They had Brock Purdy's number. They were just all over San Francisco. Right? You can now go to what's been happening with the Miami Dolphins. Some call them the 49ers of the East. Howard Bender on his show on Fantasy Alarm, he had this really good take earlier today where it's like, you don't think Josh McDaniels saw that game and was like, hey, we do things similar to Kyle Shanahan. Maybe I should make some adjustments here and avoid what's going to happen this week. It really comes down to like, do you trust Mike McDaniel to be like, hey, we do things similar to Kyle. Let's change it up a bit. Let's maximize what we have going on. Yes. And I totally trust that to be the case. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I don't believe that is going to result in Tua being the one who's the reason why Miami maybe pulls off an upset here. I think it's the running game that's going to be emphasized more here with the Miami Dolphins than I do think it is going to be the passing game. So Tyreek Hill may get his, 5 for, 100 yards or whatever. That doesn't necessarily mean Tua is going to have a great fantasy performance himself. Yep. It just means the skill players around him could or will have better performances. So out of all the players that fall under this top 12 criteria, according to Fantasy Pros ECR, he's the one that I'm the least excited about. So he's my discussion pick.
Yep. All great points there. Losing Waddle. So he's going to need, Tyreek Hill is going to have 250 yards and 3 touchdowns himself for Tua to have a really good day. So, and I love the former MVP candidate, Brock Purdy tag right there. Because he shouldn't have been an MVP candidate to begin with.
Let's be honest here. Let's be honest here. There is only one MVP candidate, and people can crucify me all they want. It's Christian McCaffrey. Because whether that team wins or loses, he balls out like nobody's business.
Yeah. And win or lose, we ball.
So that's just my take there.
All right, let's get to the chat. We got some questions in the chat. Icavelli, I need a QB from Bryce Young, Bailey Zappi, Tyrod Taylor, Jared Goff, Jacoby Brissett, or Jaron Hall. Rhett, give me one from the bunch.
I mean, if this is your picks, then it has to be Jared Goff, right? I mean, if Jared Goff is available on your wire, I mean, you get that guy because he's been the one guy that's been consistently startable all year long. Bryce Young has started all year, but hasn't been great. Everybody else is kind of mid-season fill-ins, backups, and all this different stuff, late-season fodders. So if that is indeed Jared Goff, you go there immediately.
So let me ask you this, because I think based on the other names, I'm afraid that he might have been meaning Jarrett Stidham.
Oh, okay.
Because I feel like that would make more
Okay.
sense. So like let's just assume that
Jared
that's not
Stidham?
if it's Jared Goff,
Okay,
that's who you're
okay.
going with. But if it's not Jared
Yeah,
Goff
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's Jarrett Stidham,
If it's
is your
Stidham,
Who?
is your answer
Mike Jones.
Who? You mean Jared
Mike
Studham?
Jones.
That's who you
Studham?
want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
exactly.
Yeah. So Rhett, would your answer be Studham, or would it be somebody else if that's not Jared Goff?
Well, based off of what we saw last week in Carolina, Adam Thielen had a nice game, and DJ Chark had a nice
It is
game.
Stidham,
I mean,
yeah.
he's been the only other guy that's been starting all year long. So maybe I would go Bryce Young in that situation because a lot of these other guys, you really don't know what you're getting. Tyrod Taylor, we've seen him start
Give
for
me
years, and
Tyrod.
yeah, we know he has the rushing floor, so he'd be my second pick in that situation.
I'll tell you more
Little
why a little bit later.
foreshadowing there.
I'll save my answer
like
for
it.
later. But
All
give me
right, there you
Tyrod.
go. Dylan Fink, all full PPR, 1 QB, Stroud versus Tennessee, or Fields versus Atlanta. Pick 1 running back. James Conner at Philly, Devin Singletary at Tennessee, or Zamir White at Indianapolis. And 2 wide receivers, Ayuk at Washington, Jaden Reed at Minnesota, Stephon Diggs at New England. I need 1 flex from above 2. Just got Zamir White, feels like a must start. So, Jorge, you want to handle the QB? We'll give the running back to Drew and the wide receiver to Rhett there, and then we can all agree, I guess, on the flex.
Yeah. So I'm going to go here with Justin Fields versus Atlanta. Look, I'm happy CJ Stroud is cleared the concussion protocol. The guy was having a real stellar start to his rookie career. Unfortunately, the concussions have kept him out the past couple weeks. That being the case, I like what Fields has been doing lately. He's kind of playing for his next team right now. Let's throw away the stats and let's talk about the narrative. Look, he's not going to be a Chicago Bear, I believe, next year. I think this is a put stuff on film type of last couple of games he's going to be having here. So in Atlanta's defense has not exactly been one that you should be totally scared of. Tennessee can make you kind of one-dimensional really quickly, in which case you're putting a lot on Stroud's shoulders there, coming off the concussion. A little concerned about that. So give me Fields.
Yep, Rhett.
I'm handling running backs right here. I thought I had receivers.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
So 1 running back. If we know that Josh Jacobs isn't going to play, Zamir White would be my pick. I mean, he's been a top 15 running back the last 2 weeks, and he's a plus matchup. If Jacobs, I think he's doubtful right now, but if Jacobs somehow ends up playing, it would probably be Singletary against Tennessee. With how beat up their defense has been, that run defense hasn't been as tough as the reputation was, to start the year. So I would probably go that direction at running back if we find out that Jacobs is playing, but it's White for me if Jacobs is out.
Fields, White, Rhett.
All right, wide receiver situation. I think Brandon Ayuk against the Commanders feels like an easy tap right there. And then, as much as I've been down on Stephon Diggs lately, I would probably go there. Him playing against the Patriots, and probably Ayuk and Diggs.
Yeah. We good with that flex. Diggs at the flex. So Fields versus Atlanta, White at Indianapolis. If Josh Jacobs is out, Ayuk and Diggs. James Conner's been a smash too, though. We've seen what Kenneth Walker did to the Philadelphia Eagles run defense. He had a decent day, and he's been involved in both the passing game and the running game with Kyler Murray back under center. So he's another guy that you might want to consider there in the flex if you want to pivot from Ayuk and pop Diggs in your wide receiver there. So you got a lot of great options there. But for me, like Jorge, I agree with that. QB Justin Fields is a must. I mentioned it with Howard last week there. Like you said, he's playing for his job pretty much, man. And he wants to make sure that the Bears pick isn't as good as they want it to be if he is going out the door, right? So one last little flip of the bird. So Dylan Fink, and then 1 DST, Bills DST versus New England, or Denver DST versus the Chargers. 1 kicker, Butker versus Cincinnati, and McLaughlin versus New Orleans. Jorge, you got a DST that you like more, one or the other?
Honestly, this is a very flip a coin situation. If If I had to pick one, I'd say I'd go Buffalo versus New England. I trust the playmakers that have been established here for the Buffalo Bills on the defensive side of the ball, whether it's Greg Rousseau or Jordan Poyer. So definitely liking the front end and the back end. They're more than capable of shutting down New England. For kickers, this is a very good one. Butgers versus Cincinnati. Wow, this just happened as I was just thinking. The phrase "fade the Chiefs" just came across my eyes, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, am I actually going to say this? So give me McLaughlin versus New Orleans here.
There you go. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in, Dylan. We got any more questions there?
Yep, we got a couple more.
Jelly of the month, PPR. Wait on Jamar to see if he plays Sunday or play Montgomery Saturday night. Pivots on Sunday for Jamar. If out would be Javonte Williams or Jackson Smith-Njigba. Drew, which one you got here, man? Are you trusting Jamar if he plays, or you're gonna pivot Montgomery Saturday? Which one you got, man?
What's the latest update on Jamar? Do we know?
As far as I know, questionable was the last I read. He did not practice. Was the last little tidbit news note on Jamar Chase that I did read, did come across my desk.
Listed as questionable for week 17. Closed the week with back-to-back practices, giving him a chance to return this weekend. Oh,
against
man.
KC, who's been
against KC,
pretty stout against wide receivers.
Yeah, but what you told us earlier this year about outside receivers having success against Kansas City, but L'Jarius Sneed's also been one of the best shadow corners too. So you have to hope it's on the other side of the field. And off the top of my head, I don't know where Sneed lines up versus Chase. I'd have to look at that, and I think Sneed moves around quite a bit. So that's tough, man, because Montgomery's the only other one that I would consider. Like the Sunday pivots, I would rather just play hope that Jamar plays and that I can play him over Javonte or JSN. Like I wish Montgomery was playing on Sunday, so the pivot I prefer is playing on the same day. This would be a lot easier. It's tough, man. I think I would be tempted to go with the guaranteed points with Montgomery, but man, Jamar Chase ends up playing on Sunday, and you have to sit him on your bench and you watch him go crazy. That would hurt. So that's one of the toughest questions I've been asked so far this year, I think. I'm curious to hear around the frames what you guys think about that.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna agree with you and saying that I would also be inclined to take the easy points right there. And here's why: because on a good week, even with Jahmyr Gibbs there, David Montgomery is probably going to be the goal line back. There's a 15 to 20 point ceiling there for David Montgomery. If Jamar Chase does not play, what are you looking at for the ceiling in terms of JSN or Javonte Williams? Javonte Williams has been an RB3 most of the year in terms of actual production. JSN, I'm not sure if he's had a really huge game all season long. So for me, I know that Montgomery is at least a safe floor and provides a better ceiling in this situation. So that's why I would say go Montgomery pretty much no matter what. And if Chase plays on Sunday, then at least your process is in play and you're not taking an L because of bad process and hopes and dreams that Chase plays.
There you go.
Yeah, I think you guys are 100% spot on. Play Montgomery if you have to.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for tuning in, Jelly of the Month. That is it for the questions for now. Again, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We will answer them directly live on the air. We appreciate you tuning in, Dylan. Week we will give you any kind of input. If you got dynasty questions, hit up Stacey Perez, Tyler Heil, the Dynasty DV, and anyone on the Fantasy and Frames team, and we will help you throughout the off season as well. We got Jorge Edwards here, IDP extraordinaire, co-host of Shoot the Gap with Nate Markham, and we are getting into our discussing calls for week 17. Jorge dropped us Tua Tagovailoa. Drew's about to give one of my fantasy darlings wide receiver. He's always breaking my heart in this segment here, so may as well keep it par for the course and do it again, Drew.
There has been a lot of that this year, and I promise it's not on purpose, man. But
yes,
it's happening again. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love you. But look, DJ Moore, he busted last week in a plus matchup against Arizona, and I don't think things are going to get any better this week. And what seems to be a difficult matchup for DJ Moore against Atlanta. Over the last 8 weeks, the Falcons have been the second toughest schedule-adjusted matchup for fantasy receivers. And to add to that, DJ Moore lines up as the left receiver 65% of the time. And that'll line him up against AJ Terrell quite a bit because he lines up as the right corner 57% of the time. So whenever Justin Fields made his return from injury in week 11, DJ Moore, he racked up 3 straight weeks as a wide receiver 1. I'm sure, as you know, being a DJ Moore owner. But since that, he's been the wide receiver 43 and wide receiver 77 the last 2 weeks, despite averaging 7 targets a game during that 2-week span, which I'm sure you also have felt. And so now this week with a tough matchup, I think it's going to be 3 straight frustrating weeks for DJ Moore managers. And this isn't a full set, kind of like what you were saying. You know, Fantasy Pros Week 17 ECR has Moore as the wide receiver 15, but I think he's kind of like right on the edge as a back-end wide receiver 2, more of a flex play than like a guaranteed wide receiver 2 this week. So just make the other adjustments. If you're expecting DJ Moore for upside, I'd be looking at other pockets for upside this week and expecting a little bit less out of DJ Moore.
Yeah, man. And he did get hurt. He did lose some snaps last week versus Arizona. He did come back though.
Right.
He went to the medical blue tent. We all get the messages from our
Right,
fantasy
yeah,
apps
good
that
point.
the player went to the blue tent. And then he did come back, but when he came back, he wasn't really a factor in that Chicago Bears offense. So we are fading DJ Moore this week. This next one, Rhett, that you have is quite interesting because the counterpart to this fella, the guy that has been losing, the guy that's been taking touchdown work from this running back, was listed out. I think I missed it at the top, and that's Rico Dowdle. So tell us why you have Tony Pollard now, who's in line for a decent workload as a discussing call for championship weekend.
Chris, is going to come down to this. And the fact is that despite the fact that Rico Dowdle has taken some work from Tony Pollard, is the fact that he hasn't taken all of the work from Tony Pollard, and Tony Pollard has maintained a large majority of that work. So heading into this week, he is the ECR running back 14. And I've seen it like you've seen it on Twitter. Everyone was ready for the Tony Pollard week with no Rico Dowdle. And my question for them was why? So is it because so we could see even more of that inefficiency that Tony Pollard has shown all season? I mean, I was looking at trends today, and over the past month, Tony Pollard has had 59 carries for 217 yards, which is 3.7 yards per carry. And he hasn't had an RB1 finish in that last month. And that's with a 7-reception game in his log over the past month, first off. The supposedly explosive Tony Pollard over the past month has had 1.7% of his carries go for 15 or more yards. He has been stuffed on 45.8% of his carries, and he has only forced 6 missed tackles over the past month. And on top of this for the season, we keep talking about Rico Dowdle and the snap share. Tony Pollard has maintained a 71% snap share on the season. Drop the Rico Dowdle narrative. Tony Pollard has not been good. And if he hasn't been good all season, why is he going to be good now? And you can tell me that the Detroit Lions have the best matchup for running backs in the league. But what I see when looking into the game logs is that they've held teams to 11 or fewer fantasy points in over 9 of their matchups this season. In 9 of 16 games, it's been 11 or fewer fantasy points. Also, with Dallas not being as run heavy as they have been, and this being 2 very good offenses, shootouts tend to give us more passing. So with all this being said, I understand Tony Pollard is in for a bigger workload this week with no Rico Dowdle. They've also sprinkled in Kevontae Turpin playing at running back this week. So why wouldn't we see more Kevontae Turpin backing up Tony Pollard this week as well? All I'm saying is that despite the fact that Tony Pollard should pop off this week, he hasn't shown me over the past month that he's worthy of that trust. And that's why I say he's a discussing call this week.
Yep. I dig it, man. I own quite a bit. I wouldn't say quite a bit of Tony Pollard. I own a decent amount of Tony Pollard. And, there was that little stretch there where I was like I think it was week 12 to 13, 14, where he was starting to come on, and I was like, okay, he's really going to start living up to the draft capital or the trade assets that you traded him for. And then the past couple of weeks, it's just been, heartbreak after heartbreak output. So I agree with the Tony Pollard fade there. Those are our discussing calls. Our busting calls for week 17, Geno Smith, Nico Collins, Gerald Everett. Our discussing plays, Tua Tagovailoa, DJ Moore, and Tony Pollard. Now let's hop in to our mid plays of week 17, guys that we believe are at the very least safe plays, will hit their projections for this week. And Jorge, lead us off, man. You got a doozy.
I do, and I say this because 72 hours ago, heading into one of my championships this week, I was fully confident of having Russell Wilson being my quarterback to lead me to victory, and then that kind of got taken away from me. So I was able to use my remaining fab and get Jarrett Stidham. And you know what? I have an eerie calmness about myself about this move and starting him in here. Not just because I have no other choice, but that's a huge part of it. Don't get me wrong. But we look back to week 17's hero last year of 2022 when he was a Las Vegas Raider against the vaunted San Francisco 49ers defense. 23 of 34, 365 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 26 fantasy points against the 40 freaking Niners, man. I mean, that was legendary. That's a legendary tale. If you had Jarrett Stidham last year, he could have won you a fantasy championship if you were truly in a desperate situation. And people like me who may have to start him this week are also now in a desperate situation, going against a Chargers team that you look at the past 3 weeks. Josh Allen, no surprise, 26 points. Aiden O'Connell, 25.9 points. That's a huge surprise. Russell Wilson, 16.5 points. Okay. That's not exactly great. No Cortland Sutton. We talked about that during news and notes. So, here's the thing. You go back and you look at his performance as a Raider last year. Oh, well, he just happened to have one of the best wide receivers in all of football to throw the ball to in Devontae Adams. Who the hell is he going to be throwing the ball to now that their best wide receiver here in Denver is not even playing, referring, of course, to Cortland Sutton. We talk about Jerry Jeudy. We talk, there's Marvin Mims. There's Brandon Johnson. Well, let's look back last week. Like, these guys are kind of productive. I know that's kind of a deep pull here. Brandon Johnson, week 16, 3 for 5, 47 yards and a touchdown. Marvin Mims, 3 for 4, 63 yards. McLaughlin, out of the backfield as a receiving option. Dare I say Lil Jordan Humphrey? Yes, just because I wanted to say the name Lil Jordan Humphrey. That is his real name. That is not like you just giving him like a moniker. That is his real name. Kudos to you. Dare I say the all-inspiring Adam Troutman. Look, these names don't exactly inspire a lot of confidence, but they don't have to. They just need to catch the goddamn ball, okay? And we look at these wide receiver options, whether it's Jeudy going against Asante Samuel Jr. And let me be honest, Asante Samuel Jr. is a really great cornerback, but the past couple of weeks, he's not exactly been setting the world on fire. Both he and Michael Davis have been allowing 123 NFL quarterback passer rating when targeted by opposing quarterbacks. So it's not like they're just shut down corners, or at least Asante Samuel Jr. hasn't been. So there's even some upside there with Jerry Jeudy. Michael Davis, of course, would be the one who would be guarding Marvin Mims and or Brandon Johnson. My point is that there are weapons on this Broncos team that Stidham can utilize to help get you these points. And at the end of the day, it's one of the situations here in Denver where I don't really give a damn where the ball goes to, as long as it goes for more yards and goes for touchdowns. And I think that is definitely still on the table, despite Russell Wilson not being the starting quarterback and despite Cortland Sutton not being there for the home run ball. Because let's face it, that's exactly what made Cortland Sutton such a trusted fantasy asset in recent years. It's like you knew there was going to be that one pass that he was going to chuck, that Russell Wilson was going to throw it deep to Cortland Sutton. He was going to come down with it for a touchdown. And that was the saving grace, right? Yeah. I think that the chunk plays are going to be there for Stidham. This Chargers secondary, this team as a whole is just not great. So as far as somebody who can hit like a 16, 17 point floor, I think is very realistic to say. versus somebody like I was saying for the discussing segment, Tua, we're expecting what 20s, 19 20s for Tua. I'm not expecting him to hit that floor, which is why I'm kind of disgusted by the situation there. But for Stidham to hit his floor, I think it's a more realistic possibility here versus the Chargers, which is why he is my mid quarterback play for week 17.
Yeah, and it just with all the drama and everything around the Denver Broncos right now, the situation just screams like Sean Payton putting Jarrett Stidham in a position to succeed on the week, whether it's getting him to just complete easy throws, dump offs to the running back. He could end up getting him to throw the ball 50 times, but it's going to be just stuff that's going to make him succeed. So it's the ultimate, like, we don't need you, Russell Wilson. Go ahead, Rhett.
Yeah, as someone who watched Sean Payton for years, this stinks of a Sean Payton move so bad.
It does, man.
He fetishizes the idea of making fetch happen with quarterbacks. We saw it with Taysom Hill. We saw it with Ian Book. He's done this so much over the years just to prove that he's a guru in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's such a Sean Payton move, and it hurts me to see it.
It screams it. So you're totally right in all that. Jarrett Stidham could come out and be an absolute, mid-end QB2, top-end QB2 on the week. And that's what you need. That's what you want ultimately when you're starting a guy like Jarrett Stidham this week.
And let me go on and further say this. As should be with every week during the fantasy season, and especially during this week, when it comes to picking players you want in your lineup, you got to follow the advice. And I'm paraphrasing Rusty from Ocean's 11 when he was talking to Topher Grace in the beginning. Yes, I'm dating myself because that is kind of now considered to be an old movie, but one of the best movies out there. Rule number 1 when it comes to fantasy football: keep your emotion at the door. Okay, keep the emotion out the door. Keep the logic straight and narrow. Follow the logic. If it makes sense to you, roll with it. We actually got a few questions here. Do you mind if I throw some of these up here for you, Chris?
Let's hit it. All right, Albert Mariquin's got Zamir White over Tony Pollard this week. Rhett, I'll give this one to you because Tony Pollard was your discussing call for this week.
100%, because I'm going to say this, that for Tony Pollard having 59 carries and 200-something yards over the past month, Zamir White has had 39 carries and a very similar amount of yards with touchdown upside the past couple weeks. And he's shown to be a capable pass catcher when he was at college in Georgia. So for me, no-brainer Zamir White over Tony Pollard this week.
Beautiful. Ray Gamer, thanks for tuning in. Ray, thanks for tuning in. Albert, start 2. Austin Eckler at the Broncos. David Montgomery at the Cowboys, or Zamir White at the Colts. Also for tight end, Gerald Everett at the Broncos, or Tucker Kraft at the Vikings. This is all standard 6 points per TD. Drew, what do you got, man?
It's tough not to play Austin Eckler, but with it being standard and 6 points per touchdown, assuming that Josh Jacobs doesn't play, I think Zamir White and David Montgomery it would be my answer. If it was any type of PPR league, I'd probably do Eckler instead of Montgomery. But with it being a standard 6 point per touchdown league, I think that pushes Montgomery ahead of Eckler for me. So I would play Montgomery and Zamir White, and then as far as tight end, it's close between Everett and Kraft. I would go Everett, but it's not by a big margin by any means.
Beautiful. Thanks for tuning in, Ray.
He's got one more for us.
Yeah, of course. Ray Gamer, Jalen Hurts versus the Cardinals at home, or Dak Prescott versus the Lions at home. My opponent has CeeDee Lamb, standard scoring, 6 points per TD. Jorge, you like one over the other?
I do, and I like Jalen Hurts here. I just, for me, it comes down to a rushing floor between these two situations. I'm scared of the Dallas defense going against the Lions offensive line. I'm not scared of the Lions going against the Dallas. I'm not scared of the Lions defense going against the Cowboys offensive line. But at the same time, Jalen Hurts, this team needs a bounce back win right here, and I think it's going to be quite a show. It's going to be quite a show here. You got two scrambling quarterbacks who can do it all with him and Kyler Murray. So give me Jalen Hurts, which I think is going to be an unsuspecting shootout here. That's where I'm going with that.
Yeah. Just sub. Thank you for the sub, Ray. We appreciate it. FF Sheep, PPR, desperate for the trophy. DJ Shark or Craig Dortch. Also have KJ Osborne, but Addison seems probable now. Rhett, what do you got here, man?
I would go KJ Osborne because TJ Hawkinson is now out for the season and they need a secondary target. So I would go KJ Osborne in that situation.
Yeah. Are we believing in the Shark production at all over last week? The two touchdowns? Or are we just rolling? Go with KJ.
I mean, Jacksonville is a good matchup, but I think I would roll with
Revenge
with KJ
game
too.
for Shark.
I know, man. I know that would be the one guy that I would. I mean, that's tough. That's tough, man. I've got him really close, so I really don't think there's a bad.
So let me paint the picture out. Jordan Addison is in. Are you more inclined to go with one of the other two over KJ Osborne?
Yeah, if we got the news that Jordan Addison was in, I might consider Chark at that point.
All right, and then Jordan Addison out. We're rolling KJ Osborne.
Yeah,
with Jaren Hall. Let's not forget that Jaren Hall is the starter now.
I know. I think I'm gonna have to make some adjustments to my rankings. I'm moving Chark ahead of Osborne regardless of what happens. I would play Chark. I gotta make some adjustments to my personal rankings.
Got it. Icaveli in a standard league, one out of Rashee Rice, Chris Olave, or Puka Nacua. Jorge, what do you got, man?
I trusted Puka Nacua so far this season. It hasn't turned me down. I'm going to roll with him in week 17.
It's Puka.
Puka Nacua. Plus matchup there against the G-Man as well.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate everyone tuning in. Drop the questions live on the show, and we will answer them right away. We are in our bussin', discussing, and mid-calls. Jorge dropped Jared Studham as his mid-call for Week 17. Drew, this running back has, I think, he gets the mid-player of the season award, because I think if we look at the percentages of the amount of time that this guy's ended up in this mid-segment here, he takes the cake. So our mid-king of the year is this running back. Who is it?
And I know in a recent masturbation episode, I believe I was told that we would be better off with Alexander Madison over Chuba Hubbard down the stretch, but I don't know where the hell Alexander Madison's at. And right now the Carolina backfield belongs to Chuba Hubbard. And I don't forget, man. I don't forget. All right. So over the last 5 weeks, Chuba has accounted for 78% of the running back fantasy points, 69% nice of the rushing attempts, and every single rushing touchdown during that time. And the offense itself might not be great, but his role is solidified. And now he gets a matchup against Jacksonville, who's been the fourth best schedule-adjusted matchup for the running back position over the last 5 weeks. And whenever you're averaging 20 rushing attempts a game over the last 5 weeks and the matchup is good, I really don't care how good or bad the offense is that you might play in. I'm gonna play you at that point. Fantasy Pros Week 17 ECR has Chuba as the running back 22, but I've got him up at running back 15 for the week.
There it is. The mid king has returned to mid segment in Week 17. Canadian bred Chuba Hubbard. We got one more mid call on the week, and Rhett has got one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. Let's hear it, man.
All right, this was pretty dependent on the quarterback situation. So if Jacoby Brissett plays, I'm real big on Terry McLaurin this week. He heads into the week as the ECR 28, and yes, he's playing the San Francisco 49ers, but he's playing the sneaky hit or miss San Francisco 49ers pass defense. Over the past month, they've given up to the wide receiver position 39.8 fantasy points, 28.6 fantasy points, 4.8 fantasy points to the Arizona Cardinals, and 30.4 fantasy points. And if Jacoby Brissett, if the hamstring plays out, we should be in a very good spot for Terry McLaurin this week, because over the past 2 weeks when Jacoby Brissett has played, McLaurin's ADOT has been up half a yard. The Washington Commanders have had 509 air yards. They've averaged 11 yards per reception as a team. They've had 4 passing touchdowns, 8 end zone targets. And this is the part that I love most for Terry McLaurin if Jacoby Brissett plays. They've had a 66.7 contested catch percentage, and they've gone to the first read in their offense over the past 2 weeks 72.6% of the time. So what you're telling me is if Jacoby Brissett plays this week, we are feasting with Terry McLaurin. You added up the deep ball guru Terry McLaurin is set for a big week, and he's playing a San Francisco 49ers defense that plays man 21.6% of the time and gives up 0.48 fantasy points per drop back when they do. So translation is this. Terry McLaurin's going to get deep. And all he has to do is hit one to pay it off this week. So all I'm saying is this. Terry McLaurin is the mid. If Jacoby Brissett plays. If not, he's still Terry McLaurin, and I still feel good about him hitting this floor.
Love it. Love the Terry McLaurin call this week. That is bussin', discussing, and mid with special guest, the capo, Jorge Edwards, with us here tonight. Our bus. Oh, we got a question. Nikki Banks, PPR, pick one. David Montgomery, Ty Chandler, or Zamir White. Drew, which one you got?
What a time to be alive. But if Jacobs misses, it's Zamir White, man. I can't believe I'm saying this in championship week, but that's who I play if Jacobs ends up being out.
Now, we do have the game on Saturday with Montgomery. If we don't get the Josh Jacobs news early enough, are we safe? Are we rolling Montgomery, or are we risking the weight? Josh Jacobs plays, Zamir White takes a bit of a hit, so you're stuck with Ty Chandler. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I've got Ty Chandler and David Montgomery pretty close this week. So if we get the news that it's not Zamir White as the lead back, I'm okay with pivoting to Ty Chandler.
There you have it. Thank you, Nikki. All right, so our busting calls, Geno Smith, Nico Collins, Gerald Everett, our discussing calls, Tua Tagovailoa, DJ Moore, Tony Pollard, and our mid players for Week 17 championship weekend, Jarrett Stidham, Chuba Hubbard, the mid king, and Terry McLaurin. That's that segment. We are about to pop off in some master debation. All right, we got special guest Jorge Edwards with us here tonight, co-host of Shoot the Gap, the IDP show here on the Fantasy in Frames YouTube channel. We appreciate everyone that's tuned in. Please like the stream and subscribe to the channel. Ring that notification bell to get notified whenever the Fantasy in Frames team drops new content. We got a lot of content coming your way for the off season. Also, head over to www.fantasyinframes.com to find everyone's Week 17 rankings, start sit articles, and everything else you need to succeed this championship weekend. We're going to head into master debation, and what this is, one of myself, Rhett, or Drew is going to present a situation to the other two fellas, and we're going to kind of debate on one side of that situation. And then our guest judge here, along with you, the viewers or listeners, are going to decide the winner of that debate. And first off, we're going to start off with Drew leading the charge.
All right, so it's a Week 17. It's the last time we're going to do this, a little running back flex off. You guys have been doing these flex off for running backs and receivers a lot these last few weeks. So one final time, Chris is going to tell us why Gus Edwards is the best play at running back this week, and Rhett's going to let us know why Tajay Spears is the best play at running back. So, Rhett, go ahead and let us know, start us off. Why is Tajay Spears the move?
All right, first off, thank you for letting me go first for once. I always feel like I'm playing Take a Banana in this segment, but this week I get my chance to shine and let Mr. Batistell have his retort. So, guys, let me say this. You have to love Tajay Spears over Gus Edwards. And here's why. First off, he has a better matchup this week, and he is a bigger part of the passing game, a much bigger part of the passing game than Gus Edwards has, is, or ever will be. In the past, 3 of the past 4 games, Tajay Spears has had 13 or more touches. He's had 21 targets and 16 receptions. And that by itself can account for nearly 3 fantasy points per game in PPR, half PPR formats alone. And here's the part that I bet a lot of us did not even realize. He leads the Tennessee Titans in running back snaps for the year, and he has a 60.5% snap share over the past month. He has had a 16.9% target share out of the backfield in that time. Meanwhile, Chris's boy, Gus Edwards, has a 35.5% snap share and a 2% target share. And we let's break it down. Let's go even further. We talked about the snap percentages. Gus Edwards, 35.5%. Tyjae Spears, 60.5%. Rush attempts, Gus Edwards, 31. Tyjae Spears, 41. Attempt percentage, Gus holds a slight advantage, 33% to 31.3. Let's chalk that up to Lamar Jackson. And fantasy points per game, Tyjae Spears holds a slight advantage, 9.8 fantasy points per game over the past month versus Gus Edwards, 9.5. So pass work, snaps, passing work is more high leverage for running backs, especially in half PPR formats. He's getting more snaps. He's in a situation where in all likelihood, he's going to have more opportunity this week. So I'm going to say give me Tyjae Spears over Gus Edwards. And for me, it's not really that close.
All right, so you didn't get to play second banana this time, but you got to play first banana. And what it comes down to me for Gus Edwards over Tyjae Spears this week, championship weekend, and the snap share and snap count is great and all, but as the Baltimore Ravens continue to roll the San Francisco 49ers last week, we saw more of Justice Hill come in at the back half of that game, and they kind of took Gus Edwards out. But Gus Edwards doesn't have Derrick Henry in front of him. If Derrick Henry starts to roll against the Houston Texans, we're going to see a healthy dose of Derrick Henry. Yes, Tyjae Spears has been more involved in the pass catching game. I'll give you that. But when you're looking at when it comes time to make bread, when it comes time to score, Gus Edwards over the last 2 games, 10 red zone carries. How many red zone carries did Tyjae Spears have over the last 2 games? He had 0 over the last 3 games. He's had 1 over the last 4 games. He's had 4 over the last 5 games. He's had 4 over the last 6 games. He's had 5. So he's just not consistent when the ball gets inside that 20. That's what I want when I'm looking for a safe running back to start this week. Gus Edwards is going to be that guy for the Baltimore Ravens against the matchup is, I wouldn't say it's better for Tyjae Spears against the Houston Texans. When you're looking at what running backs have done against the Houston Texans, no running back has rushed for over 100 yards since week 4. Running backs are averaging 22 carries and only 69 yards a game. That's 3.11 yards per carry and 0.67 touchdowns per game against the Houston Texans. Before last week, no rushing touchdowns against the Texans since week 10. So that's where the deficiency is going to come for Tyjae Spears this week over Gus Edwards, primarily because Gus Edwards is the red zone guy. And if he gets 2 touchdowns, that's what I want for a guy that's going to be either a flex play or a running back too. And that's why Gus Edwards is the play over Tyjae Spears.
All right, guys, you had some great arguments here. Rhett, I'm going to ask you a question here. Do you remember back, I want to say it was 2013 or 2012, when it was the rematch between The Rock and John Cena, and they had this promo in the middle of the ring, and The Rock just flat out just put Cena on the ground with this quote: "You think you can beat me? I know I can beat you," having done it previously at the previous year's WrestleMania. This kind of applies to this situation here. You think Tyjae Spears is going to get opportunity. I know Gus Edwards is going to get opportunity because we've seen Gus Edwards get said opportunity. And it's because I've seen it, not that I wish it, that I'm going to give Gus Edwards and Chris the win here in this debate here in this flex.
I just gave you the case as to Tyjae Spears getting actual opportunity, but you guys go ahead and live in fairyland with your 30% snap shares and your pie in the sky, and we'll be good to go. Okay, we're great. Love it.
I love Fairyland. So there you go. Gus Edwards over Tajay Spear. Let us know in the chat. Let us know on Twitter. You can get at our Manual Sports on Twitter, at myself at FF Chris B on Twitter, at Jorge B Edwards on Twitter, and Drew at Drew3MR on the X machine. We're going to get another one here. And this time it's your turn, Rhett, to deliver the scenario.
All right, so I'm mad at this segment, as I have been all year long. So what I wanted to do is make you guys as miserable as possible and choose the preferred backup quarterback for the week. Chris, you're going to talk about Jacoby Brissett. Drew, you're going to talk about Tyrod Taylor. I'm going to sit back and watch both of you be miserable as Jorge decides which of these arguments is less bad. Go.
I'll lead
Chris,
it off
go
the
first.
top.
Go ahead.
I'll lead off the top. I got Jacoby Brissett. He's questionable to play on the week. He's got the groin injury. I believe he's also been dealing with a bit of illness. Both guys, it's hard to come up with any kind of long-term efficiency numbers or any kind of team efficiency numbers because they've been really only rolling with the team for so long. Both in pretty good matchups, I would say, Drew. Tyrod Taylor draws the Los Angeles Rams, and Jacoby Brissett gets the Seattle Seahawks. The one thing that I think might lean towards Jacoby Brissett is the weapons he's got around him. We saw Tyrod Taylor make Darius Slayton a semi-final darling last week. The Washington Commanders, though, throw the ball league high 38.7 times per game. That's the amount of pass plays that they run. So there is that positivity there for Jacoby Brissett. Like Rhett mentioned at the top, I believe, Rhett, you were talking about Jacoby at the top there with Terry McLaurin and how much success Terry McLaurin's going to have with the deep ball, because Jacoby Brissett is just not afraid to toss the ball downfield. And he's got the weapons to do it. Terry McLaurin, he's got Jahan Dotson, he's got Logan Thomas there, which we've seen him pepper in the red zone. And that's what it's going to come down to at the end of the day is opposing defenses. Seattle Seahawks defense isn't the greatest. They have been leaky throughout the season. And, of course, the Los Angeles Rams defense, again, leaky throughout the season to opposing quarterbacks. But for me, it's the fact that Jacoby Brissett has the more elite options around him. Brian Robinson is expected to be back. He's got Antonio Gibson there. So their running game is going to start rolling as well for them. And again, I'm not going to compare Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson to the running game of Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor also pretty much holds more of a rushing advantage. But for me, if I'm going to chase the points, I'm going to chase the guy that I've seen come in relief, against the Jets, against some of these good teams where he's been able to just push the ball downfield and make some fantasy points. So he's getting a full game under center, hopefully with the groin injury, which is going to limit his movement a little bit. But for me, I want the guy that's going to give me the opportunity to probably put up better chance than Tyrod, at least 303 TDs throwing over Tyrod, who's going to most likely play it safe and be playing against the Los Angeles Rams.
So you said that Jacoby was playing Seattle. They're playing San Francisco this week, right?
Sorry, yeah, AFC West.
Okay.
My bad. I got the
NFC West, yeah.
Yeah. See, I even got the division wrong.
So I would not agree. I don't think that both guys have a good matchup because Jacoby playing San Francisco, they're the fourth toughest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks over the last 8 weeks. Whenever you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points given up to the position, so I don't think that's a good matchup personally. So no, I cannot head nod with you on both these guys got good matchups because Tyrod's playing against the Rams, who have been the 8th best compared to the 4th worst schedule adjusted matchup for fantasy quarterbacks over the last 8 weeks. And if you narrow that down to the last 5 weeks, the Rams have been the 3rd best matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. And it's not like they've seen a murderer's row of quarterbacks over that span either, because I mean they 3 of the 5 matchups were Cleveland, Washington, and New Orleans. So, a lot of this has to do with the fact that the Rams are one of the best run defenses in the league. And teams know that if you want to have success, you have to pass the ball against them. And in fact, they struggle more with rushing quarterbacks than they do actual running backs. So that's just another point for Tyrod's favor. But, I mean, look, Tyrod, Jacoby Brissett, these guys are backups for a reason. So I'm not going to try to sit here and beat your head over why Tyrod is a marginally better fantasy quarterback because he is. But I think the matchup is the main thing to focus on. So whenever you look at that, I do agree with you. I think Brissett has the better weapons, but Tyrod, he's getting Darren Waller back. He has the rushing upside. In my opinion, I don't think it's close in terms of matchup. I think he has a huge advantage with his matchup. So whenever you're looking at streaming backup quarterbacks, give me the guy with the better matchup and the rushing ability for the safer floor as well. So give me Tyrod in week 17.
I was wrong with the team. Sorry, Jorge.
No, you're fine.
Just
You're
to
fine.
rebuttal on that, QBs over the last 4 weeks versus San Francisco 49ers are averaging 21 fantasy points per game. So not a bad matchup per se.
Yeah, they're like, I think they're 15th
You
over the
can
last
adjust
5 weeks.
the schedule all you want.
They're and the Rams are still a better matchup, no matter how you shape
They
it.
are. I'll give it to you. The Rams are a better. I'm not saying the Niners are a better matchup at all. I'm just saying the Niners aren't as bad.
So, needless to say, I am trying very hardly to remove any and all bias from this question because it's very NFC East focused. Before I, give you my my opinion here of who won this flex up, let's answer Josh's question. Flex spot: Noah Brown or Ken Walker? Rhett, let's ask you since you hadn't talked yet with this recent one.
I think it's got to be Ken Walker just because of opportunity. We know Nico Collins is back. We know there's no Tank Dell. We know CJ Stroud is back, but we know that pretty much on any given week, Ken Walker is getting 15 touches in most weeks. So Noah Brown, a little bit more hit or miss, boom or bust. So go with consistency in championship week. Go with Ken Walker.
All right. Now the deliberations are over. I've got my Vance. We should have had Stacy on here. She has the legal jargon way better than I do. Let's face it. You guys nailed it from the beginning. There's not a huge sample size to go off of here. I will say, though, you look back to week 7 versus the Washington Commanders. Tyrod Taylor did put up 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, 25 rushing yards, 21.7 fantasy points. So I've seen him do it. I've seen him have that good fantasy week. You bring up a very good point, Drew, about the matchup. The 8th most fantasy points to the quarterback position the Rams are yielding. The Rams are in for the season now. Are in the top 12 of most fantasy points allowed to the running backs and wide receivers and tight ends. Actually, very favorable to tight ends. Darren Waller being back, Tyrod Taylor has the weaponry. He has the matchup. Now, Chris, you bring up a very good point. Jacoby Brissett, we saw him come on versus the Rams for that quarter. Played, better than Sam Howell did. That's for sure. And he made Terry McLaurin a lot more relevant for that game. We saw him come in relief for Sam Howell again against the Jets. I believe he was 10 for 11, 9 for 10 for 10 fantasy points, 100 yards passing against this Jets secondary. Again, sample size being what it is, at the end of the day, my thought process here is, okay, I've seen Brissett do this for a quarter. I've seen Tyrod do this for a game in terms of having success. So because of, again, making that small sample size and given the matchup here, and let's, whether it's Howell or Brissett, I have reservations about how the Commanders are going to do. So I'll leave that there. But I will say, given the matchup, given what I've seen of Tyrod Taylor, given the let's think about this for a second here. Offensive line notwithstanding, Tyrod Taylor can escape pressure. Okay, so that helps you scrambling yards, quarterback points. Fantastic, we love that. That's the cheat code, right? Darius Slayton, a deep threat. The underneath guy and Wan'Dale, in the slot. You have Darren Waller there, assuming he's healthy, good to go. I mean, you have 3 solid pieces of a receiving option there. You have Saquon Barkley out of the backfield. I'm kind of
Aaron Donald, though. Aaron Donald.
Sure. Aaron Donald's letting the points, Aaron Donald and his defense are still saving some points in this position.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like, there is more of a sample size to work with in terms of looking at the stats and the playmakers and the opportunity here with Tyrod. So I'm going to lean Drew's way and go Tyrod over Jacoby Brissett. But either way, it's not ideal, but I'm picking the lesser of two evils here.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give that to you, Drew. I'll give you the Tyrod Taylor there. But I mean, if I got Jacoby Brissett and I need him, I don't hate it. I don't hate it against the Niners. I'm not gonna be scared. We got one more here, Jorge, before we let you go here on Master Debation. And this time it's about tight end streaming. Nothing but a streamer. Let's go. Rhett versus Drew. Drew's repping Darren Waller, which is you're just gonna beat Rhett with his own guy. You just took his club and beat him over his head with his own club. And Rhett's going to give us Tucker Kraft. Drew, you're on the clock.
Yeah, we just talked about how I like Tyrod as a streaming quarterback this week. So how could I not like Darren Waller? And the last time Tyrod and Waller played together, Jorge mentioned it just a second ago. But it was week 7 of this year whenever Tyrod was the QB7 on the week and Darren Waller was the tight end 3 on the week, which was his best game of the year as well. Now, the very next week was when Waller's most recent injury took place, but this is going to be his 3rd week back from that injury. And the last 2 weeks, his snaps have went from 42% his first week back to 63% this most recent week. And I would expect that snap percentage number to continue to trend up this week as well. But even in limited snaps, he's averaged 5.5 targets a game. And now he's in what I'm expecting to be another increase in snaps. He gets a matchup against the Rams, who have been the 3rd best schedule adjusted matchup for the tight end position on the year. Now, Tucker Kraft, on the other hand, he's been the Packers' full-time tight end since week 12, and his highest finish has been the tight end 6, which that's not bad by any means, but I just don't believe he offers the upside that Darren Waller is going to offer you in week 17 specifically. Waller doesn't have the competition for targets that Kraft has between Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Dontavian Wicks. And on top of that, Tucker Kraft has the more difficult matchup as well. On the year, the Vikings are the 5th most difficult schedule-adjusted matchup at the position, and they're also tied in for the 2nd least amount of touchdowns given up to the tight end position on the year. And both of Tucker Kraft's top 10 tight end weeks this week have been weeks where he's scored a touchdown, and he's been the tight end 16 or worse the weeks that he hasn't scored a touchdown. So just quick recap. In my opinion, Kraft has. I keep trying to say Kraft. I promise I'm not saying crap on purpose. It's just a crap play to go with Kraft. So Kraft has more target competition, a more difficult matchup, and less upside, in my humble opinion. So whenever I'm checking the boxes for a streaming tight end, those are all the boxes that I check for on guys I don't want to play. So stay away from Tucker Kraft. Give me Darren Waller this week.
You just subconsciously putting crap into the judge's head. There.
I couldn't
help
it.
Drew.
It was an accident. I didn't even mean
Drew. You try to cut my throat with my own knife, and in turn, you're about to get roasted, my man. So let's just talk about it. Take the easy money and take Tucker Kraft, so we can all agree. Talking about the whole season when Darren Waller has been back for 2 weeks is a little bit asinine on my part. So let's talk about the past 2 weeks. Okay, Drew, you ready to do this? Let's have some fun, bud.
I'm waiting.
Let's talk targets. Tucker Kraft 13, Darren Waller 10. Target percentage 19.4% for Tucker Kraft, 14.3% for Darren Waller. Percentage of team receiving yards. Tucker Kraft 23.3%, Darren Waller 19%. Yards per reception. This is where it's getting good. Tucker Kraft 14.63, Darren Waller 12. Yards per target. Tucker Kraft 9, Darren Waller 7. Route participation. Tucker Kraft 88.7%, Darren Waller 52.4%. Where is your God right now? He's not on the field. Anyway, let's keep rolling. Yards per route run. Tucker Kraft 1.86, Darren Waller 1.57. And slot rate, Tucker Kraft 33.3%, Darren Waller 62.8%. So to my knowledge, the only thing Darren Waller has done better over the past 2 weeks is stand up on a football field. Isn't it clear for all of us? And it hurts me because I love Darren Waller, but Tucker Kraft over the past 2 weeks has been so much more reliable. We play a game of trends, not a game of week 7. Take Tucker Kraft.
So just to be clear, all the why not? Why not?
Then I gotta give him a rebuttal. Drew, sorry, no, go ahead, Drew. You got a point to go. Go.
Nope.
Go ahead, bud.
I've got nothing. I've got nothing. There's nothing like a good take the best week out of a player's stats line and magically he's not good thing. I love the whole that player might have been good, but if you take away this one play, he actually sucks. I love those arguments. They're always good. Let's completely
play a game of trends.
Right. Let's completely ignore what Waller did the last time he played with Tyrod, who he's playing with this week. Instead of discussing that, let's discuss what he did the last 2 weeks coming off an injury. Whenever he was playing with the quarterback, he's not even playing with this week. That seems much more relevant to talk about.
Please take all factors into consideration. Okay?
Rhett just went, you think Darren Waller is
You don't get
ally.
to tell me you're going to roast me at the top of your argument and say I don't get a rebuttal. No, hell no. That's not how this works. Absolutely not.
Oh, Rhett just went, you think Darren Waller is your ally. You merely adopted it. He was born in it. He was molded by Darren Waller.
Great reference. Rhett, does it feel like that scene with Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair in the middle of the ring where Darren Waller, where you're on one knee and you're just like, come on. And Darren Waller's looking to you and he says, I'm sorry. I love you. And then
You're not doing this.
Kick.
You're not doing this right now.
Darren Waller just do the I'm sorry, I love you super kick.
You're not doing this right now.
I think that's what just happened because, look, Tucker Craft, you're right. Trends are definitely something that we should be paying attention to. 100%, absolutely. But Drew also pointed out the fact that there is a trend. He is starting to play more snaps, right? And so, we have to go into this situation thinking, okay, these guys are good to go. These guys are good to go. Sure. So if that's my mindset, it's Darren Waller, and given the matchup against the Rams, who
so stupid.
Who the Rams are allowing the 5th most fantasy points to the tight end position on the year. Okay. That being the case, here's the thing. I don't actually hate Tucker Craft. He had a horrible matchup last week and played very well. So it's not like I'm saying that this is folks, when we're saying flex off here, we're not saying start or sit. We're saying, look, this is my argument why this player I think is a better option than that player. But when I'm looking at these two guys, we say Darren Waller may be like 4, let's say tight end 4 in somebody's rankings. It is totally reasonable to say Tucker Craft is like 6.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or 7.
Yeah, good points.
We're pulling hairs here. We're pulling strings here. So I want to give you that, Rhett. But yeah, he definitely pulled the "I'm sorry, I love you" super kick moment on you just there, Darren Waller.
There it is. Darren Waller is the streamer.
I'm going to make a video about that with your face imposed as Ric Flair and Darren Waller's face as Shawn Michaels when he does the "I'm sorry, I got you." I got you.
That's master debation. We got Gus Edwards over Tajee Spears. We got Tyrod Taylor over Jacoby Brissett. And our nothing but a streamer tight end, Darren Waller over Tucker Craft. And it was at that moment you could see Rhett's heartbreak. Joshua Ramsey, another Simpsons reference, Jorge. Hope you caught that one. Joshua Ramsey, Jags D or Seahawks D or Bears D. Who do you got, Jorge?
I'm going to go the Seahawks. I like their offensive or defensive tackles. Boye Mafe is definitely somebody there. Is it Dexter Lawrence? God, I can't remember. I think it's Dexter Lawrence. Yeah, he's also been playing lights out. Julian Love playing lights out, coming on in relief of Jamal Adams. So give me the Seahawks here versus the Steelers this week. And then,
yes, sir. Thank you for tuning in. Hello, Dr. Kevin Murray. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it, everybody here. Patty, start 1 PPR. Ezekiel, league winner. Elliott, Aaron Jones, or James Conner, Drew?
I think it's Aaron Jones.
Ooh. Aaron Jones over the other two.
I think so, man. I mean, Zeke against Buffalo. It would, for me, it would be between Aaron Jones and James Conner.
Mhm.
And I mean, Philadelphia's run defense hasn't been as good as of late, but I think it's still a tough group. So I think I'd go with Aaron Jones.
Has any take on that?
Ironically, I'm throwing it back to 2017, 2016. I think I'd roll with Zeke. I think I saw a stat the other day that the Buffalo Bills are yielding a lot of yards and receptions to pass catching running backs, which has been what's been Zeke's saving grace here for him as a fantasy winner for people so far this season. Awesome. And Rhett takes James Conner, so he absolutely provides zero.
You're welcome for all the help.
I would say
that.
In that situation.
Oh, we got another question here. Really. Joshua Renzi, seems kind of crazy to ask, but would you play Mostert or Zamir White, Rhett?
Yeah, that is a crazy question. Like, it's been a big Zamir White on the show, big Zamir White week so far on the show. But I mean, Raheem Mostert has just been so good in all aspects. Like
Baltimore, man, in Baltimore.
And I hear you, and I see you, and I love you. But the man has had over 20 rushing touchdowns this season.
I know.
And if we're gonna play the dance with the girl that brought you here, sort of thing in championship week, Raheem Mostert has to be one of those dudes. And that's so tough because Zamir White is a smash play this week. So like I would say flip a coin. I really can't commit to either one right now because tough matchup versus that guy who's gonna have a great opportunity. Like it's tough.
Yep. There you go. Go ahead, Jorge.
I was gonna agree. I think, like I said earlier in the show, I think this ball, the key to the Miami here is the Chan Mostert combo. So give me Mostert despite the tough matchup. We got another one here.
Yep. Lev Noxious, 2 out of James Conner, Tony Pollard, or Chuba Hubbard. Jorge, which 2 you rolling with?
Give me Conner and Chuba.
Beautiful. There it is.
Got another one.
Yep. Connor LaRose, Jalen Warren, or Calvin Ridley, full PPR, Drew?
That's tough, man, because Carolina's not a good matchup for receivers, and now they've got a backup quarterback playing. I think I have to go Jalen Warren in that one. That's tough. If Trevor Lawrence was playing, I would have said Calvin Ridley, but with no Trevor Lawrence, I think I got to go Jalen Warren.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. All right. That was Masturbation. We're going to hop into Trust and Bust or Ring the Alarm before we let everyone go. All right, ring the alarm. We're going to do it a bit differently this week, considering it is championship weekend. I'm going to give each of you guys a high-profile player that has been struggling over the last little bit. Sometimes I give you guys a situation and ask if it's a dynasty target or whatnot. But this week, championship weekend, we want to know if we can trust the guys that got us here, and what better player and what better analyst to have on the show than Jorge Edwards here to talk about this linebacker over the last 5 weeks. He's put up single-digit tackle totals. He was a stud for pretty much the first part of the season and has really, really slowed down here. I own him in one league, and I benched him for the new linebacker option in Washington. I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name, but his last name is Hudson. Taking over for Jamin Davis, who's been an absolute baller in relief. So Jorge Edwards, are we trusting TJ Edwards this week for the Chicago Bears?
I'm not, and you hit the nail right on the head. The double-digit tackle days are far from there. What saved TJ Edwards and quite frankly, Tremaine Edmonds in recent weeks has been the splash play. It's been the forced fumble. It's been the interception. You take those away, you're looking at 6 or 7 tackle performances. Not what you want out of your LB1s. Definitely not somebody definitely not the tackle numbers you want in championship week. Coincidentally, I believe it's Kaliki Hudson. I could be completely butchering that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Coming on, like you mentioned, in relief of Jamin Davis, has been playing lights out. I mean, just the tackle numbers, playing in coverage. He's making tackles everywhere. What you want? You want the tackle volume. And yes, there is a little bit of a concern that, last week versus the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen didn't get a high tackle number situation going on there versus San Francisco 49ers. I do think, however, that Kobe DeMartin and Kaliki Hudson will have a very good weeks this week versus San Francisco, who will just run. San Francisco, the Commanders are basically out all of their starting cornerbacks. They're into a backup second linebacker. They traded away both of their premier edge rushers during the season, one of which is on the 49ers and Chase Young. So, needless to say, I think this team is going to be on the defensive side of the ball for more often than not this game, which gives the time and opportunity here for these linebackers to really get the tackle numbers that they should be getting. So I'm calling TJ Edwards a bust in week 17.
Yep, that's fair. So my decision to put Hudson in, I don't feel as bad right now because I like TJ Edwards, man. So having to put in a guy who's been on great output just for 2 weeks over a guy who's been able to do it, as we've seen in Philadelphia and Chicago for most of the season, kind of hurts to see him go back, but I totally agree with the bus call.
Well, what makes for IDP, it's one of those things where you have to think about it, and that is there anybody else on the team who's just as efficient as you are in tackling and making tackles? And he is with Tremaine Edmonds. But now we have a box safety in Jaquan Brisker who creeps up to the line of scrimmage and plays more of a hybrid defensive back linebacker role. So now you got 3 highly efficient tacklers crowding the middle of the field. There are only so many tackles to go around. Therefore, they're all eating into each other's workload. You don't want that. You want to stay away from that situation.
Yes, sir. Great insight right there. Do not trust TJ Edwards this championship week. Rhett, I got a wide receiver for you. One of my favorites. The situation has been grim all year. He has a touchdown. Other than last week, no touchdowns last week. The 3 games before that, he had a touchdown saving his week every week. In those 3 weeks, we've seen his snap share decrease a little bit over the last few weeks. Now that he's got Mason Rudolph as his quarterback, it's not looking any better. He does have a plus matchup, though, against, this is the team playing the Seattle Seahawks. Does have a plus matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. But are we trusting Deontay Johnson this week?
Oh, we are not. We are busting out Deontay Johnson this week. And let's just start with asking this question. Has anyone done the due diligence and time and done the right thing and filed a missing persons report on Deontay Johnson after last week as of yet? Has anyone done that for us?
I think we have to wait 2 full weeks before we file that report.
Okay, because the first 72 is the most crucial time to discover whether someone can be found or not. And last I checked, my man wasn't there last week. And he hasn't really been there since he returned in week 7. And he's actually had 3 finishes where he was a wide receiver 75 or worse. He hasn't had a 100-yard game. He's only had 78 targets this season. And yes, you mentioned it. He's got a decent matchup this week. But is he really going to benefit from that good matchup whenever, number 1, he is a slot guy, which number 2 has primarily been playing outside, and number 3, playing with a deep ball artist like Mason Rudolph? I don't see it. Last week we talked about it. Only 5 targets, only played 63% of snaps, and only had 28% of the team's targets. When he's been at his best, which has been, by the way, with Kenny Pickett, that receiving has been somewhere over 40% or better of looks. 40% versus 28%. Quite a big jump right there. I just don't see it this week. I'd love to be wrong because, like you said, we love Deontay Johnson, great player, but it just hasn't happened this season. So I'm going to go ahead and say bust for this week.
Yep, fair call right there. Bust call for Deontay Johnson. And our last one of the fantasy football season. Trust or bust. Drew, let's assume in one scenario, let's assume he plays. He's missed a couple weeks. And are we going to trust him against the Indianapolis Colts? And now let's assume that he's questionable up until the week. Are we trusting him in our lineups, or should we pivot somewhere else? Maybe a guy that's playing Saturday. We talked about it a bit. We've had a lot of questions with Zamir White. We know that Antonio Pierce is, he's coaching for his job there as well. He might not
should
want
already
to
have the job.
like, sure. Yeah. Well, we thought the same about Rich Bisaccia last year.
We sure did
as well. Yep. And he should have had a job.
He sure should have.
We don't know what's going to happen there with the Las Vegas Raiders. But if he plays this week, coming off a extended missed period of time, are we trusting Josh Jacobs in championship weekend?
No, I think it would have to be a bust for me on Josh Jacobs if he ends up being active. With how unactive he's been with practice this week, if he ends up somehow being an active play in the game, there's no way I would be able to trust him in championship week. Now, on the flip side of that, if what we expect to happen happens and he ends up being ruled out and Zamir White is active and is the guy that has been the last 2 weeks. I mean, with Jacobs out the last 2 weeks, at least Zamir White's played at least 70% of snaps and saw 21 plus opportunities each of the last 2 weeks. And he's turned both of those weeks into top 15 running back weeks. So assuming he gets a similar workload to what he's had the last couple weeks, the Colts, they've been the third best schedule adjusted matchup for running backs over the last 8 weeks. So I would be trusting Zamir White as a running back 2 this week if Jacobs is out. If Jacobs is active, I'm probably just going to play neither one of them.
Fair enough. There you have it. Trust or bust. Busting all 3 guys, TJ Edwards, Deontay Johnson, and if he plays, Josh Jacobs. That's it for the show. We had very special guest Jorge Edwards with us. This is the championship show for Fourth and Frames as we head in to our off-season content.
Good luck, everybody.
Everyone. Yes, good luck. I speak for everyone when I say we appreciate each and every guest, each and every viewer that has come on the show, dropped a question, liked the stream, subscribe to the channel, followed us across any platform, read our content. We appreciate each and every one of you. And most importantly, Jorge, I'm sure I speak for both Rhett and Drew when I say we appreciate everything you do and have done for the 3 of us here on Fourth and Frames. You threw us into the fire by putting us all on the show together, and we have cultivated this beautiful friendship, and that is all thanks to you. Everything you do that the people don't see, whether it's promoting our work or giving us the resources to come on to this show on a weekly basis and deliver the actionable analysis of each and every player that we talk about week in, week out. The leash that you give us is longer by the week, and we truly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, on behalf of everybody who's in the chat here, who's joined us tonight, who's watched your all shows, who's been guests on your shows, all the 2023, we all want to thank you all for being such passionate people when it comes to fantasy football. I mean, you literally turn on an episode or listen to an episode of Fourth and Frames, and it's like you're hanging out with your buddies, talking shop about fantasy football and having some fun here or there, throwing in segments, it's just been amazing watching, what you all have done here at Fantasy and Frames. So is what everybody else at Fantasy and Frames has been here. It's crazy to think heading into 2023 last year, there was 7 of us. And now, our family is rolling 20 deep at Fantasy and Frames, and everybody's been
it's crazy.
doing amazing work. And you all have just taken this show and made it your own and have been given so many people so much great, well-supported, actionable advice. And that's the best you can do. You guys are super interactive on Twitter. You guys are super interactive in the chats. You really It's none of this like I think this player is going to do this or I hope like no like you bring it, you bring the information, and that's all you could ask for. So I'm thankful for you all here on Fourth and Frames. I'm thankful for everybody else in the Fantasy and Frames family here in 2023. And you know, every year we always try to push the envelope. We always try to do more, put different spins on things, do different twists on things, make it more fun for you to watch fantasy football. There are tons of shows out there, tons of brands out there. Why do you watch Fantasy and Frames? Because of the people that we have here, the quality content we have here. And 2024 is going to be something that is going to be even bigger than it has been this year. And that's saying a lot.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's
Absolutely.
appreciated. The opportunity alone that all three of us have gotten. All of us were on with Howard Bender on Sirius XM just a week ago. If you told me a year ago from today that's where I would be a year from now, week 16, week 17 in the fantasy football space and community, I would have called you crazy. But since joining Fantasy and Frames, I've had the time of my life creating content here with these two yahoos and with the team at Fantasy and Frames. And I just want to extend my appreciation with that. Rhett, Drew, if you guys got anything to say, man, the frame is yours.
So, from the bottom of my heart, everything you guys have said above and beyond, like you two have made this year so much fun. Jorge, for all the support. Gator J, our producer, who isn't here with us right now, but man, what a mentor, what a person, what a guy. Zach, Nate, Tyler, like everyone on the team, it's just been fantastic. Howard Bender for giving us those opportunities. Bob Harris, anyone and everyone who has taken a chance on us and coming on our show. Like, it's been so cool just to have those interactions and do that networking and just feel like part of a thing that's so much bigger than me. Because unlike you a year ago, Chris, you were actually doing content. I was doing none of this. And to go from 0 to 100 real quick it's just been surreal. So I've had a blast, man.
Yeah, it's a blessing, man. It really is. I mean, get to sit around with guys that you consider friends or family. You just get to talk football, talk fantasy football for an hour, lately 2 hours a week, depending on how our shows have been going. I mean, it's as far as things that I love goes, family's obviously at the top of fantasy football. Is not far behind it. So to get to sit down and talk fantasy football with people that I consider family, it's definitely a lot of fun. It's it's a blast, and I hate that this season's already over, but that's all right though, because we got plans for bigger and better things for moving forward. But no, I mean, this entire team of Fantasy and Frames from the top to the bottom is second to none, and no group that I'd rather work with, from Jorge and Gator to you guys and everybody behind the scenes that you guys might not necessarily see. Everybody's working hard though, and it's a great group to be a part of. So just easy to feel very blessed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, and 2024 is going to be huge because here at Fourth and Frames, especially at Fantasy and Frames, we love our chips with the dip. So we got a double dip them championships. Jorge, just because you're the boss, you're on Fourth and Frames tonight, we got to hear the falsetto, man. We cannot let you off the hook without singing a tune. So any shot, we get the big boss man dropping some lyrics.
So yeah, you're gonna hear it. I don't know if you're gonna want to hear it. Those who are hear it, those who are listening, I chose this song, the first lyrics to this song, because it's apropos. New Year's is in a couple days. Which, by the way, Fantasy and Frames pregame show Sunday, last one of the season, 9 to 12, answering every single start-sit question, as well as going game by game, talking about all the fantasy relevant players on offense and defense. But I thought that this is very apropos by Bob Dylan. Little ditty to sign us off with here. So, excuse me, have a cold. Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept it that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving. And you better start swimming, or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'.
Yeah, let's go. Appreciate you. That was terrific. And without further ado, championship weekend. Good luck for Rhett at R. Emanuel Sports, for Drew at Drew 3MR, for myself at Chris Battista at FF Crispy. Good luck this weekend. Chase those chips. Toodles.